Once upon a time, over 100 years ago, there sat an amazing mansion house by the side of a lazy river. Over the years, owners came and went, and finally, one day, it was abandoned. Left to nature to decay, over time, it became twisted with vines, like the hair that hung from Rapunzel's tower. 3 years ago, we visited this lost mansion, and it has stuck in the back of our minds ever since. This exquisite place is rarely mentioned or visited. Since our video, many of you have asked us to make fixes to it, and we did. However, this alone was not enough for us. The mansion and tower, entwined by vines, has shrouded its secrets well. On our first trip, it left us with very few answers as to who built it, who lived there, or its past. We are excited to have returned and are now able to share with you what we have discovered after digging deep into its history, its family genealogy, and old maps to untangle the mystery that surrounds this wondrous abandoned place. There's no written history of this place, and only a build date and family name on record. In our last exploration, we visited the outlying stable and kennels and made an intriguing discovery that has helped break open its mystery. As we walk down this disused road, heading towards Rapunzel's castle, its signature tower looms ahead of us, entwined with fantastical living vines. Before we head inside to explore its amazing architecture or show you the mansion from above, we are first excited to share what we have learned since we found the calendar at the stables by digging into genealogy, old maps, and records. These, along with graves, have allowed us to piece together the parts of the lost story of this amazing place, a tale that has never been told until now. Rapunzel's Abandoned Fairytale Castle, a tangled lost story. Our story begins with two well-known Scottish border clans, the Bells and the Irvings. The Irvings are also known today as the Irwins and the Irvines. According to legend, the Irvings were related to early Celtic kings in Scotland. Duncan Irvine was importantly the brother of Crinan and descended from High Kings of Ireland. You may remember we explored his abandoned Donaghy clan mansion in the link above. Crinan married the daughter of Malcolm II of Scotland, and their son became King Duncan I of Scotland. In this way, they were connected to the throne. The Irvines supported the Bruce clan, and William de Irwin was armor-bearer and secretary to Robert the Bruce. For his service, he was given a barony in the royal forest of Drum, where they built Drum Castle. Also, for helping Robert the Bruce hide after his defeat at Methven in a copse of holly, he was given a family armorial badge of 3 holly leaves. In the following centuries, the clan fought against Clan Keith, and the lairds of Drum helped ransom James I from the English, fought in the Anglo-Scottish Wars, and supported Charles I in the English Civil War, and then the Jacobite cause at Sheriffmuir and Culloden. The forever linked nearby clan Bell's name may be Norman or come from the Celtic sun god Belinus, the Shining One. The clan first appeared around the year 1000 and were large in number. Other versions of the name are Beal and Bale. By the 1600s, they were ruled by a Chief William Bell known as Red Cloak, and considered along with the Irvings to be troublesome border reivers. Both clans made their living off raiding and were in conflict with each other often. However, when Red Cloak died, the clan fell apart into smaller groups. In 1549, Richard Irving received a charter for lands near the Bells for his services in the border feuds. Sometime around 1750, the Irvings married into the local Bell clan family and inherited nearby lands. The family then became the Bell Irvings. Through the generations, the family lived there until in 1813, Laird John Bell Irving was born. In life, he was well known for his establishment of a fox hunting club, his wins in greyhound racing, his skill at curling, his generosity, service as a justice of the peace, and for his long experience in banking. He lived on a small estate near the Scottish borders and later married Mary Jardine of the wealthy Jardine trading firm and had 5 sons and 5 daughters. His son William was born in 1851, and likely due to the large family size, he traveled overseas in 1874 at the age of 23 to India, where he worked first at the family merchant firm as a partner, and then as president of the Bank of Bengal. In India, he was to become well known as one of the best shots in the country, a horse owner, racer, and big game huntsman. While there, his uncle Henry's branch of the family, who were very wealthy, fell on hard times after a fire destroyed their West Indies plantation. He was to die in 1864, leaving his widow and their 7 children to move to Germany. His son Henry was to then sell the family's substantial lands in 1895 to William, along with an earlier house that stood there. It was here that William was to decide to either expand or replace the old house with an incredibly ornate and fantastic new mansion, at the very height and end of the popularity of the Baronial Mansion architectural style. On this map can be seen both the original kennel and stable we last explored, as well as the original house. And then, on this later map, it can be seen as a much larger house, with the stables and the kennels also altered. The mansion we explored today was finished sometime around 1897, when William finally moved back to Scotland at the age of 46 to his uncle's old family lands he'd just purchased. While living in the mansion, he served as a justice of the peace for the county, dealing with civil offenses and minor cases until his sudden, unexpected death in November 1904 at the age of just 53. William left no wife or children to inherit the lands or mansion he had spent his fortunes building and lived in for just 7 years. Amazingly, his father John lived to 93, outlasting him by 2 more years. From here, history is vague, but it seems that his oldest brother John inherited, whether through the father or directly upon William's death. We know from stumbling upon local gravestones that either way John, who had been away in Hong Kong since 1872, had returned in 1889 to Scotland and eventually was to live in the mansion and die there. He had been very successful overseas and was chairman of the HSBC, vice chairman of the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce, member of the City Hall Committee and St. Paul's College, also steward of the Hong Kong Jockey Club, president of the Polo Club, chairman of the China Sugar Refining Company, director of the Hong Kong and Whampoa Dock Company, and the Hong Kong, Canton, and Macau Steamboat Company. He was also made a Justice of the Peace and was appointed one of the 6 members of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. He was famous for his 5 successive horse racing championship wins, his fox hunting, being a taipan in the colony, and bringing electricity to Hong Kong. He died at the mansion in 1925 at the age of 80. He had one son, Major John Bell Irving, who fought in World War I as part of a camel-mounted infantry unit and was to inherit and also live at the mansion, but also possibly the other family home. During World War II, he donated it to the military to be used as part of what may have been a hospital for the wounded. On this map, in fact, many buildings of this military camp can be seen and are very numerous. Some of these foundations can also be seen in our drone footage we'll be showing you later on. While this history is no longer on record, it seems that after the end of the war, the house was in sad shape and Major John died in 1960 at age 74, sometime after which the family requested an order for demolition. But instead the house was stripped of furniture and its roof was removed to avoid the government tax on roofed structures. We believe that the calendar we previously discovered in the stables pictured here spells out that the last date of occupation was June 1968. This photo is the last known to exist of the house, taken shortly before its partial destruction. It then faded away, sitting here alone, until we explore it today. Still, a truly imposing house. The first thing one sees is the front with a massive vine-enshrouded tower and the intact porte cochere, which would have allowed for small vehicles to pass under the front door while picking up passengers or protect those waiting from the rain. The tower looms overhead, fantastically tangled. Over the decades, the mansion has fused with nature, gaining a life of its own. The mansion is now surrounded by wild vetch plants, flowering in the sun. Last time we traveled through the side of the mansion, but it's worth exploring from the perspective of a visitor who would have arrived at this grand main entrance and marble stairway. Though, I think it's now the layers of windows and arches that really captivate. At some point, looters or the family removed many of the tiles here. The thistle patterns can still be seen under the dirt, despite the work of the pickaxes. High above, some of the features of the tower can be seen. Under the vines, the turrets are corbelled. Normally designed to be a weight-supporting feature in castles, here it is sheer ornamentation. This place has many fine details like this, and we'll be talking more about what this means later. Large second-floor windows now gape into nothingness. Across the now destroyed floor lies one of the most ornate and memorable fireplaces I have ever seen in a mansion. Situated as the first thing you'd see upon entering the house, this was the focus of the mansion, made to impress. Reflecting its current state, many of the carved pieces of stonework here are of leaves, thistles, or holly plants. The stonework here is one of a kind. I've always found the view in this main hall to be otherworldly. Last visit we somehow missed showing the tower. It's a wonder it's still standing, but what is inside is a sight to behold. Far up, a lone, vine-shrouded window and drainpipe hole. One is reminded of a certain verse from Rapunzel. When the woman was brought to bed, The enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower, which lay in a forest, and had neither stairs nor door, but quite at the top was a little window. The larger circular hole may have been for a ladder leading to the top. From old photos, we know this window was earlier made of stained glass. Let's check out some of the large side rooms of the hall. Old lathes and plasterwork still cling to these walls. It seems to have had a similar pink or light red theme like the outbuildings we explored previously. Long windows would have once flooded this room with light. Now the trees submerge this space in a perpetual shade. Rooms like this always bring to mind one of my favorite writers, Walter de la Mare's poem, The Empty House. See this house, how dark it is, beneath its vast bowed trees. Not one trembling leaflet cries to that watcher in the skies. Remove, remove thy searching gaze, innocent of heaven's ways. Brood not, moon, so wildly bright, on secrets hidden from sight. Secrets, sighs the night wind, vacancy is all I find. Every keyhole I have made wails a summons, faint and sad. No voice ever answers me, only vacancy. Once, the cricket shrills, and far and near the quiet fills with its tiny voice, and then, hush, falls again. Mute shadows creeping slow, mark how the hours go. Every stone is moldering slow, and the least winds that blow, some minutest atom shake, some fretting ruin make, in roof and walls. How black it is beneath these thick-boughed trees. On the floor, a huge fallen piece of deeply carved stone. On our first visit here, as we left, we startled a man who was hiking outside and thought that we were ghosts. When I convinced him to enter, he compared the vines growing on the walls to those of the ancient city of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. They seem far more ancient than 30 or 40 years in age. In fact, here they have giantly grown to the size of small tree limbs. High above, you can just make out more ornate corbelling and the arched wooden tops of doorways. Later, we will be using the drone to access inaccessible points like this one and revealing some of the stunning details that have never been recorded before. In this smaller room on the floor lies an even larger piece of ornate stonework. Nearby, more shattered remnants of what would have been a huge piece of stone. Across the way, a fireplace with dark green tiles.
So it would have been outside.
The pattern on the stone appears to be a flower in full bloom. In this room, more intact plaster can be seen. It's a deep pink. But it's this high wall that is truly something special, rising to 3 or 4 stories, sun-dabbled and overgrown. To its side, a large barred window, and cutting through the wall, a series of doorways that would have connected these rooms through a main hallway. At the very top, the outer edge of a collapsed turret jabs outwards. Often you find these bones of small animals. These places are truly worlds of their own, where creatures can be born, live, and die, all within the same walls. If you look all the way up, 4 walls tower around you. This room is the bottom floor of the larger main tower, the roof of which has now fallen.
Where? Of course. Abandoned dicks.
Unfortunately, even the most obscure place can attract graffiti. I've often wondered if this house had a basement. The presence of a stone wine closet seems to suggest it didn't. The heart-shaped fireplace here is a singular feature, the likes of which I've never seen before in a building. Peaked and crow-stepped windows like this one are throughout the house. This side room is very overgrown with just a small, plain fireplace. But the walls above are an incredible tangle of creeping vines. Due to the regular smooth sides of this rectangular chamber, my best guess would be this shaft served to fit a small elevator. There's a hole below which makes us return to thoughts of this place once having a cellar. From this side, there's a small crawl space. It seems to end in a small deep hole with some kind of jutting support. This could be related to an underground fuel tank. It also runs along the other side of the house. Your guess is as good as mine. If you have any ideas, please do let us know. I'm not one for spiders, so we stayed out. On the ground are large rocks not present here before. This archway is one of my favorite features here. It's a little too perfect even. It appears that the wall is slowly caving in due to tree roots, and this doorway will soon be gone. It's a door that has served me well for many a photo. In this room you might sense a difference. It's more caved in and filled with rubble and undergrowth. We have a theory that seems to play out on the maps we've discovered. On the 1930s map, here it can be seen that the house is in its current size. But on this 1850s map, you can see a smaller building covering the north of the house. We believe this earlier house was either built onto or simply added to the new mansion in 1897. Being 50 years older, it has more rapidly fallen in, becoming almost a jungle. We head down some fallen blocks to get a better view. You can see the building here is much more square, though scattered around are more complex carved stones fallen long ago. There's a mix of small bricks, large blocks, sandstone, and fieldstone, showing a variety of possible building addition dates. Mostly a single plant has brought about this ruin. Charles Dickens immortalized its effects well. "Oh, a dainty plant is the ivy green, that creepeth o'er ruins old. Of right choice food are his meals, I ween, in his cell so lone and cold. The wall must be crumbled, the stone decayed, to pleasure his dainty whim. And the mouldering dust that years have made is a merry meal for him. Creeping where no life is seen, a rare old plant is the ivy green."
Oh, the big bird.
Along a precipitous path lined with entire fallen walls can be seen the outer edge of what would have once been the original house. This room is the one we entered through the first time we came to this place. Not only have trees grown here, but they've grown old, and they've also died. Through this window is a hint of some of what we have left to show you. The front side entrance is more ornate than the main one. Over the door is a winged motif with a flower. Above all, a small half tower with a high-up tiny balcony. It's truly a magical entrance. It brings to mind the words of Emily Dickinson, "Nature is a haunted house, but art is a house that tries to be haunted." We're going to head up these steps to show you what it would have been like to enter from this side, and then we're going to go back outside and show you the best features of this place, for they have yet to be seen. By now you might be asking yourself, what's so special about this mansion? What we have uncovered in our research is that this house is in fact one of the last, most amazing surviving examples of what was known as the Scottish Baronial style. Its incredible features we are going to show you are strangely mostly on the back side of the house and less often looked upon. No longer in use, many people have never heard of this type of architecture. From the 1500s onwards, the Scottish Renaissance created an architecture known as Scottish Baronial. Crawlspace Castle is a great example of this with its round towers and square top projections and corbelling. It may have been influenced by French builders in Scotland and combined some aspects of Gothic and the Renaissance and was a sign of status as castles had become obsolete due to the use of cannons. These late castles and towers were often built in a zigzag or what was known as a Z-plan. By 1660, the style died off, being replaced by English influences. The return of a new baronial style that our mansion was modeled upon began likely with Culzean Castle, built by architect William Adam in the late 1700s. A slow rise continued until the building of Abbotsford House for Sir Walter Scott in 1816. It featured battlements, crow-stepped gables, spiral stairways, and pointed turrets. Early innovators in the style were William Byrne, David Bryce, and Edward Bloor. Their examples include the famous National Wallace Monument and Helen's Tower, but it was really the building of Balmoral Castle as a palace for Queen Victoria that made it truly popular. Major features of the new style were corbelled round towers and turrets, ornate porticos, and heraldry, creating a sort of Gothic revival castle. In time, rich families began to build these as personal houses just like our mansion. The style was eventually to reach other countries like Ireland, Canada, and New Zealand. The baronial style hit its peak by the late 1800s with the decline of mansions, and by 1899, one of the last examples was a rebuilding of Skibo Castle for Andrew Carnegie. By the start of the 1900s, the style had essentially died off. Since this house was built in 1897, it represents the height of the style and is one of the most ornate examples I've ever seen. This makes it even more amazing that it stands abandoned and forgotten. Official records for some time actually stated that the house did not in fact exist, and it was in a sense lost. Let's head out the front and see for ourselves what makes this place so special. My favorite thing to shoot here is actually the reverse side of this window you only see while leaving. It simply glows and feels like you're staring into a portal to another world or time. And I their alien words would know, and follow past the lonely wall, where gilded moons and sunsets fall, as in a song of long ago. Around the side, the first hints of the ornate embellishments can be seen hidden under the strangling limbs of the vines. It's truly fantastic how the plants have grown here. Above what would have been a small side door is another ornate balcony. You may remember seeing the door from the inside where it has the appearance of a window. The steps below it have crumbled away. As we slowly reach the back, the mansion becomes more ornate, with side turrets, heavy corbelling, and arched windows. I've been obsessed with shooting this side ever since I first saw it. There's always a detail you miss and discover each subsequent time photographing it. This balcony has always truly reminded me of one a princess would hang her golden hair from, just placed over the now cavernous doorway. To the side, the arch we showed you earlier, on its outward-facing side, has a knotwork. This symbolism is often seen on law buildings and likely was put there due to the builder, William's history as a justice of the peace. The fine details are so many, the features so ornate that photo and video does this mansion little justice. You might wonder how anybody could leave a place like this and never return, or where the family is today that could forget such a place. It turns out success may have swept away their cares for a dusty ruin like this. William's brother James was to move to Hong Kong and become part of its legislative council and chairman of the HSBC. He later moved back to Scotland into his own mansion, Minto House, which has since been demolished. His brother Andrew fought in the Afghan War and then became a colonel before dying in 1929. His brother David became head of the local Otterhound Club and a well-known hunter. Today, the family legacy lives on in the Jardine Matheson Group, in which their heavy past involvement as partners has helped lead the company to become a $40 billion business, still based in Hong Kong. Through our research, we've also found the forgotten story of the branch of the Bell Irving family who first owned these lands before they were sold to William. After they'd moved to Germany, their son Henry, who was very industrious, was able to get an education as an engineer. He then moved to Canada in 1882, where he joined the Canadian Pacific Railway as a surveyor and was a well-known watercolor painter. He eventually took the money he saved away and started what would become the largest salmon fishing operation in the world, the Anglo-British Columbia Packing Company. He then started the Automatic Can Company, likely using money from his sale of the mansion's lands. He died in 1931. In Canada, Henry's descendants served in both World War I and World War II with distinction. 4 of his sons were awarded 9 decorations for bravery in total. Henry also donated 3 company ships to the Canadian Navy. Pictured here are Isabel, Roderick, Henry, Aeneas, Richard, Malcolm, and Duncan. Roderick died in World War I, leading an attack as an officer. Duncan, Aeneas, and Henry were also to fight in World War II, as was Henry's son Henry, who later became Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia. The truth is that the world simply continued onwards and has left this house behind, forgotten by its builders and by time itself. If for nothing else, that's why urban explorers exist today. It has been what attracted me from my education in anthropology and history, which focused on a farther past. In a modern world where places and buildings are discarded and replaced more and more rapidly, there's a less recognized immediate need to record history close at hand, to find lost and forgotten places and save them for record before they're totally lost. The world's just caught up to recognizing lost mansions like this one. 50 were demolished in Scotland in the 1960s alone. In fact, across the UK, some 1,200 historic mansions have been leveled since just 1900. If you aren't quite convinced yet that this is a unique place, we're going to take you above and explore close up, showing you some details that have never been recorded before that I feel prove why this house is truly unforgettable and one of a kind. Near the entrance, the family crest can still be seen of an armored fist holding 2 holly leaves, normally accompanied by the family motto in Latin given to them by Robert the Bruce, flourishing both in sunshine and in shade. In all directions, nothing but cow fields and trees. In the distance, some of the foundations from the military camp can still be seen. And now let's explore some of the details in the back of the house up close. Hear the balcony that has always captured my imagination. A peaked window with etched patterns. Atop battlements, a crescent moon-topped window. Small, ornamental spikes or drain pipes surround the top of the house. Nothing in this world is hidden forever. The gold which has lain for centuries unsuspected in the ground reveals itself one day on the surface. Sand turns traitor and betrays the footstep that has passed over it. Water gives back to the telltale surface the body that has been drowned. Fire itself leaves the confession in ashes of the substance consumed in it. Hate breaks its prison secrecy in the thoughts through the doorways of the eyes, and love finds the Judas who betrayed it by a kiss. Look where we will, the inevitable law of revelation is one of the laws of nature. The lasting preservation of a secret is a miracle which the world has never yet seen. A delicate flower pattern tops a window with its own small yellow flower, somehow now growing next to it, a perfect tiny symbol of how the mansion lives on, mimicking and yet one with nature. Thank you so much for joining us in bringing this forgotten place back to life one last time and discovering with us the forgotten secrets and now untangled story of Rapunzel's lost castle. Join us again next time as we explore two ancient and mysterious holy sites, their ritual offerings, carvings, and enigmatic pasts. Until then. Subscribe and explore with us today.